Commander Jake Morrison stood at the window of his ship and watched the alien fleet appear in space above Earth. The ships were huge and strange, looking with blue lights that pulsed like a heartbeat. There were so many of them that they blocked out the stars. Jake had never seen anything like it in his 20 years of military service. The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations, but Jake could see the fear in their eyes. Lieutenant Bobby Williams checked his scanner 3 times before he spoke. The numbers were bad. More than 3,000 alien ships had just arrived, and they were all pointing their weapons at Earth. Admiral Lisa Carter was in the command center, deep underground when the aliens sent their message. The voice that came through the speakers was cold and had no emotion. It spoke perfect English, which made everyone in the room feel uncomfortable. How long had these aliens been watching them? The alien spokesman called himself High Commander Vex of the Zephyrian Empire. He said that humans had broken galactic law by leaving their home planet and building colonies on other worlds. Earth had exactly 72 hours to surrender completely. All human military forces had to be destroyed. All weapons had to be given up. Every person on Earth would become a slave of the Zephyrian Empire. Dr. Nathan Pierce sat in his laboratory and listened to the alien message over and over again. He was the top expert on alien life, but he had never heard of the Zephyrians before. The way they talked about humans made his blood boil. They called Earth a breeding colony and humans were just workers who could be used for hard labor. The message continued for 10 more minutes, and each word made the situation worse. The Zephyrians had been watching Earth for 50 years. They knew about human cities and human technology. They thought humans were weak and stupid. The High Commander laughed when he talked about human weapons. He said human missiles were like toys compared to Zephyrian power. President Maria Rodriguez called an emergency meeting in the secret bunker under Geneva. Leaders from every country came as fast as they could. The room was filled with tension and fear. Everyone knew that humanity was facing its greatest challenge ever. Captain Ryan Brooks was the first to speak. He was Earth's best military mind, and he had studied every detail of the alien message. Something was wrong with what the aliens knew about human capabilities. They talked about nuclear weapons and chemical rockets like those were the best things humans had. They had no idea about the secret projects that had been running for decades. The Zephyrians thought they were dealing with a primitive species that had just learned how to fly in space. They were completely wrong. For the last 50 years, humans had been working on weapons and ships that could match anything in the galaxy. The projects were so secret that only a few hundred people knew about them. Colonel Amy Watson was one of those people. She sat quietly in the corner of the meeting room and said nothing. She knew about Project Nightfall and the hidden weapons platforms scattered through the solar system. The aliens had no idea those weapons existed. Their sensors had not detected anything because human stealth technology was better than they thought possible. Dr. Rachel Burns was another person who knew the truth. She had helped design the communication system that connected all human colonies. Mars, Europa, Titan, and 12 other worlds were all linked together. If Earth was attacked, then every human settlement would know about it instantly. They would all fight back together. The meeting lasted for 6 hours. Some leaders wanted to negotiate with the aliens. Others wanted to fight immediately. President Rodriguez listened to everyone, but she had already made up her mind. Humanity would not become slaves to anyone. If the Zephyrians wanted a war, then they would get one. General Kevin Adams was put in charge of military operations. He had been planning for this day ever since humans first detected alien signals 20 years ago. The preparations were complete. Hidden bases were ready. Secret weapons were loaded. Soldiers were waiting for orders. The Zephyrians had made their biggest mistake when they underestimated humans. They thought Earth was helpless because they had only watched during the early space age. They saw primitive rockets and simple satellites. They never saw the quantum drives or plasma weapons that came later. They never detected the stealth ships or antimatter bombs. Captain Ben Tucker was on one of those stealth ships right now. The UES Shadow was floating in empty space near Neptune, and the aliens had no idea it was there. 46 other ships were hidden in the same way. They had been waiting for years for something like this to happen. The alien deadline was still 68 hours away, but human preparations were almost finished. Underground cities were being sealed. Weapons were being moved into position. Soldiers were saying goodbye to their families. Everyone knew that the next few days would change everything. The Zephyrian fleet stayed in formation above Earth and waited for surrender. Their bioorganic ships pulsed with confidence. High Commander Vex was already planning how to use human slaves in his factories. The other Zephyrian officers were discussing which human cities to destroy as examples. They had conquered 47 other species in the same way. Show up with a big fleet, demand surrender, and then take everything. It always worked. The primitive species always gave up when they saw Zephyrian power. Humans would be no different, but something was happening that the Zephyrians could not see. Messages were flying between human bases at faster than light speed. Ships were moving through space using routes the aliens did not know existed. Weapons that had never been tested in real combat were being prepared for use. Lieutenant Sophie Grant was coordinating the civilian evacuation from her post under New York City. Millions of people were moving into the underground shelters that had been built in secret. The bunkers had everything needed to survive for months. Food, water, power, and air recycling systems. The aliens thought they were attacking a helpless world. They were about to discover that humans had been preparing for this moment for decades. Earth was not defenseless. Humanity was not weak. And, the Zephyrian Empire was about to learn why humans had survived every challenge their planet had thrown at them. The countdown had begun. In 68 hours, the galaxy would see what happened when someone tried to enslave the human race. Colonel Amy Watson pressed her hand against the scanner and waited for the green light. The hidden door slid open with a soft hiss, and she stepped into the most classified room on Earth. Project Nightfall had been her life's work for the past 15 years, and now it was time to see if all that effort had been worth it. The control room was buried 3 miles under the Colorado mountains. Dozens of screens showed locations throughout the solar system where invisible weapons platforms waited in the darkness. Each platform was armed with enough firepower to destroy a city. The aliens flying above Earth had no idea these weapons existed. Amy walked to the main console and entered her command codes. One by one, the hidden stations came online. Platform 7 near Jupiter responded first. Its antimatter torpedoes were ready and its particle beam array was charging. Platform 12 behind Saturn's rings reported all systems green. Platform 23 in the asteroid belt was waiting for orders. Captain Ben Tucker was floating in space 50 million miles from Earth aboard the stealth destroyer UES Shadow. The ship was completely invisible to alien sensors because it was covered in quantum absorption material that bent light around the hull. Ben had been waiting in this position for 3 months, and he was ready for action. The Shadow was not alone. 46 other stealth ships were scattered throughout the outer solar system. Each one was equipped with the most advanced weapons humans had ever built. Plasma cannons that could cut through any armor. Gravity bombs that could crush a battleship. Fusion missiles that burned hotter than the core of a star. Ben checked his communication screen and saw messages from the other stealth ship captains. Commander Ellen Davis on the UES Ghost was ready near Uranus. Captain Gary Phillips on the UES Phantom was hidden in the comet cloud. Captain Nicole Thompson on the UES Spirit was waiting behind Mars. All 47 ships were in position and ready to strike. Lieutenant Sophie Grant stood in the command center of Underground City. One beneath New York, the massive bunker stretched for miles in every direction and could house 10 million people. Similar cities had been built under every major population center on Earth. The construction had taken 20 years and cost more money than any project in human history. Sophie watched the evacuation reports scroll across her screen. 90% of civilians were now safely underground. The bunkers had fusion reactors for power and hydroponic farms for food. They could survive for years without any contact with the surface. The aliens could bomb Earth for months and barely scratch the Underground cities. General Kevin Adams sat in his chair at Cheyenne Mountain and studied the tactical display. The Zephyrian fleet was holding position above Earth in a standard intimidation formation. Their ships were spread out to look impressive, but they were actually in the worst possible position for a real fight. Kevin had studied alien tactics for decades, and he knew exactly how to exploit their weaknesses. The aliens thought they were dealing with a primitive species that would panic at the sight of a big fleet. They were using psychological warfare instead of real military strategy. That was going to be their downfall because humans had been planning for a real war since the first alien signals were detected. Dr. Rachel Burns was in the communication center sending coded messages to human colonies throughout the galaxy. Mars colony responded within minutes. Commander Tony Lewis confirmed that the Martian Defense Force was ready for battle. Their ships were hidden on the far side of the red planet and the aliens had not detected them. Europa Base sent the next message. Captain Lavra Kim reported that her submarine fleet was ready to launch from beneath the ice. The aliens would never expect an attack to come from under the surface of a frozen moon. Titan Station confirmed that their atmospheric fighters were fueled and armed. Even the small research base on Pluto was ready to fight, the 12 Interstellar. Colonies were too far away to help with the immediate battle, but they had received the alert signal. If Earth fell then, they would carry on the fight. Humanity would survive no matter what happened in the next few days. Dr. Nathan Pierce was analyzing the alien fleet from his laboratory. The Zephyrian ships were impressive looking, but they had obvious design flaws. Their bioorganic hulls were strong against energy weapons but vulnerable to kinetic projectiles. Their sensor arrays were sophisticated, but they operated on frequencies that human jammers could disrupt. The aliens had evolved their technology over millions of years, but that made them predictable. They always used the same tactics because those tactics had always worked. Humans had only been in space for a few decades, but they had developed completely different approaches to warfare. The Zephyrians were about to face weapons and strategies they had never encountered before. Marcus Bell was in the Cyber Warfare Division working on his most important project. The Zephyrian fleet used a hive mind communication system that linked all their ships together. If human hackers could break into that network, then they could disrupt the entire fleet at once. Marcus had been studying captured alien technology for 5 years, and he thought he had found a way in. Admiral Lisa Carter was reviewing the final battle plans when President Rodriguez arrived at the command center. The president looked tired, but determined. She had just finished speaking with world leaders and everyone was in agreement. Humanity would not surrender to alien invaders. The fight would begin as soon as the enemy made their first hostile move. The Zephyrian deadline was now only 12 hours away. High Commander Vex was confident that humans would surrender when they realized how hopeless their situation was. He had conquered 47 other species using the same methods. Show overwhelming force and wait for the primitive aliens to give up, but something was happening that Vex could not detect. Human ships were moving into attack positions throughout the solar system. Weapons that had been hidden for years were powering up. Soldiers who had trained their entire lives for this moment were taking their positions. The trap was almost ready. Captain Derek Stone was at his post in the Planetary Defense Control Room. Hidden silos across Earth contained massive railguns that could launch projectiles at incredible speeds. Orbital mirrors were adjusting their positions to focus solar energy into deadly beams. The planet itself was about to become a weapon. The aliens were expecting humans to either surrender or put up a weak fight with primitive missiles and nuclear bombs. They had no idea that Earth had become the most heavily fortified world in the galaxy. Every human had been working toward this day for 50 years, and now they were ready to show the universe what happened when someone threatened their home. Admiral Helen Price watched the countdown timer reach 0 on her command screen. The 72-hour deadline had passed, and the Zephyrians were about to learn that humans did not surrender easily. She pressed the red button that would change the course of galactic history forever. The hidden command ship UES Retribution materialized from quantum stealth, just above Earth's North Pole. Helen had been waiting in invisible silence for 3 days while the alien fleet strutted around in their intimidation formation. Now it was time to show them what real military power looked like. High Commander Vex was on the bridge of his flagship when the impossible happened. Human ships appeared out of empty space all around his fleet. His sensors had detected nothing, but suddenly there were dozens of warships pointing weapons at his vessels. His tactical officer stammered that it was impossible, but the evidence was right there on the screens. Commander Tony Lewis led Squadron 7 in the first attack wave. His plasma cannons locked onto the alien flagship and fired 3 rapid bursts. The superheated energy tore through the bioorganic armor like it was paper. Explosions rippled along the hull of the massive Zephyrian vessel as secondary systems overloaded and caught fire. The aliens tried to return fire, but their weapons were designed to fight primitive enemies with simple technology. The bioplasma beams that had terrified 47 other species bounced harmlessly off human deflector shields. The Zephyrians discovered that their most powerful weapons could not even scratch human armor. Captain Ben Tucker brought the U-Shadow out of stealth behind a cluster of alien cruisers. His antimatter torpedoes struck 3 ships simultaneously, and the results were devastating. Each torpedo contained enough compressed antimatter to power a city for a year. When they exploded, the alien ships simply ceased to exist. The battle spread throughout Earth's orbital space as more human vessels joined the fight. The stealth fleet had been waiting for this moment, and they attacked with precision that shocked the enemy commanders. Every shot was perfectly aimed. Every maneuver was calculated to maximum effect. The humans fought like they had been planning this battle for decades. Captain Lavra Kim was monitoring the tactical display from her command post when she noticed the critical weakness in the Zephyrian formation. Their ships were linked together by quantum communication beams that allowed them to coordinate as a single unit. If those beams could be disrupted, then the entire fleet would lose coordination. Marcus Bell received the signal and launched his cyber attack. His team had spent 5 years learning how Zephyrian computer systems worked, and now they put that knowledge to use. Virus programs designed specifically for bioorganic processors flooded into the alien network and began tearing it apart from the inside. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Zephyrian ships that had been moving in perfect formation suddenly began crashing into each other. Weapon systems fired randomly in all directions. Navigation computers sent vessels spinning out of control. The mighty alien armada became a chaotic mess in less than 10 minutes. Colonel Derek Stone activated the planetary defense grid and watched as massive railguns emerged from hidden silos across Earth's surface. The weapons had been disguised as industrial facilities for 20 years, but now they revealed their true purpose. Projectiles accelerated to 20% of light speed, streaked upward toward the confused alien fleet. The kinetic rounds struck Zephyrian vessels with the force of nuclear explosions. Bioorganic hulls that had evolved to resist energy weapons had no defense against solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. Ships that had survived battles across the galaxy were torn apart by simple chunks of metal moving really fast. Orbital mirrors that had been positioned as solar collectors suddenly turned toward the alien fleet and focused concentrated sunlight into devastating beam weapons. The mirrors had been built over 15 years, and no one suspected they were actually components of a massive laser array. Now they unleashed the power of Earth's star against the invaders. Captain Gary Phillips coordinated the attack from his position near Jupiter. The hidden weapons platforms throughout the solar system opened fire simultaneously. Antimatter missiles launched from the asteroid belt. Particle beam arrays fired from behind Saturn's rings. Gravity bombs detonated near the moons of Uranus. The entire solar system had become a weapons platform. High Commander Vex tried to retreat, but discovered that human ships were faster than his biovessels. Captain Nicole Thompson led the pursuit squadron, and her quantum drives could outrun anything the Zephyrians had. The aliens who had come to conquer Earth found themselves being hunted through their own formations. The battle above Earth lasted exactly 6 hours and 14 minutes. When it was over, more than half the Zephyrian fleet had been destroyed, and The rest were fleeing toward the edge of the solar system. Not a single human ship had been lost, and only 3 had taken significant damage. The victory was so complete that it shocked everyone who witnessed it. Lieutenant Sophie Grant emerged from the underground bunkers to see the debris field that had once been the mighty Zephyrian Armada. Pieces of alien technology drifted through Earth's orbital space like metallic snow. The species that had demanded human surrender were now running for their lives. Dr. Rachel Burns received reports from human colonies throughout the galaxy. The news of Earth's victory was spreading at faster than light speed, and the reaction was incredible. Species that had been enslaved by the Zephyrians for centuries were rising up in rebellion. The word was out that the mighty empire could be defeated. Admiral Helen Price ordered her ships to pursue the retreating aliens. The Zephyrians had started this fight, but humans were going to finish it. The alien survivors were heading back toward their home systems, and they would find human warships following right behind them. General Kevin Adams coordinated the mop-up operations as human forces secured the orbital space around Earth. Captured alien technology was being analyzed by science teams. Prisoners were being questioned about Zephyrian military capabilities. Plans were being made for the next phase of the war. The aliens had expected to find a primitive world that would surrender at the first show of force. Instead, they had encountered a military machine that had been preparing for this exact scenario for 50 years. The hunters had become the hunted, and the galaxy would never be the same. President Rodriguez addressed the world from the rebuilt White House. Humanity had won its first interstellar war, but this was just the beginning. The Zephyrian Empire had enslaved dozens of species, and now it was time to set them free. Earth's warships were about to carry human justice to every corner of the galaxy. Ambassador Ellen Davis stood before the Galactic Council and delivered humanity's message with calm authority. The great assembly hall on the neutral world of Centris Prime had never heard such words before. Earth was rejecting its classification as a primitive species and demanding recognition as a sovereign military power. The galaxy would have to accept that humans were no longer the weak race they had once been. The council members sat in stunned silence as Ellen played recordings of the battle above Earth. The holographic display showed Zephyrian ships being destroyed with terrifying efficiency. Advanced civilizations that had existed for millions of years watched primitive humans defeat one of the galaxy's most feared empires in less than 7 hours. Captain Gary Phillips led the human pursuit fleet deep into Zephyrian territory. His ships had followed the retreating aliens across 12 star systems, and the results were always the same. Zephyrian colonies that had never been threatened in centuries were now evacuating in panic as human warships appeared in their skies. The U.S. thunder struck first at the Zephyrian mining world of Kepler-7. The planet had been strip mined by slave labor for over 2,000 years, but now the slaves were being freed by human marines. Captain Phillips watched as alien overseers fled in terror while their former prisoners cheered and waved human flags. Admiral Nicole Thompson established the first human forward base in the Vega system using captured Zephyrian infrastructure. Her engineering teams reverse-engineered alien technology and improved it within days. But the organic processes that had taken the Zephyrians millennia to develop were upgraded with human quantum computing in less than a week. The speed of human adaptation shocked alien observers throughout the galaxy. Species that had needed centuries to master basic spaceflight watched humans incorporate alien tech into their own systems almost immediately. Every captured Zephyrian facility became a human research station where new weapons and ships were being developed. Dr. Paul Martinez was in his laboratory on Europa, analyzing the genetic databases taken from Zephyrian command ships. What he discovered made his blood run cold. The alien empire had not just enslaved other species, they had been breeding them like livestock. Entire worlds full of intelligent beings were treated as nothing more than biological resources. The data files contained records of 43 enslaved civilizations. The Zephyrians had conquered peaceful trading peoples, nomadic star wanderers, and even other aggressive military races. All of them had been reduced to slave status and forced to work in alien factories and mines. Some species had been enslaved for so long that they had forgotten they were once free. Paul transmitted his findings to every human colony and military base. The evidence spread through human space like wildfire, and the reaction was immediate. Humanity had thought they were fighting for their own freedom, but now they realized they were fighting for the freedom of the entire galaxy. General Kate Anderson received requests for help from resistance movements on 17 different worlds. The oppressed peoples had heard about Earth's victory, and they wanted human weapons and training to fight their own liberation wars. Kate authorized immediate support operations, and human special forces teams began deploying throughout Zephyrian space. The liberation of Altair IV was the first major success. The native Altarians had been enslaved for over 800 years, but they still remembered how to fight. Human advisors taught them how to use plasma weapons and quantum explosives. Within 3 weeks, the entire planet was free, and Zephyrian garrison forces were fleeing to orbit. Captain Tony Lewis commanded the relief mission to the slave world of Volf 359. His Marines found conditions that violated every standard of civilized behavior. Intelligent beings were kept in cages and forced to work 18-hour shifts in dangerous chemical plants. The Zephyrian guards were executed on the spot, and the slaves were given human medical treatment. The domino effect spread throughout the Empire as world after world rose up against their oppressors. The Zephyrians had ruled through fear for thousands of years, but that fear was gone now. Everyone knew that humans could defeat the Empire and would help anyone who wanted to fight for freedom. Commander Marcus Bell expanded his cyber warfare operations to target Zephyrian communication networks throughout the galaxy. His virus program spread through their bioorganic computers like a plague. Imperial command centers lost contact with their colonies. Military bases could not coordinate with their fleets. The Empire's nervous system was being systematically destroyed. Admiral Helen Price established the Human Liberation Fleet with ships donated by every Earth colony. The fleet grew larger every week as more vessels rolled out of human shipyards. Production facilities that had been building civilian cargo haulers were now turning out warships faster than the Zephyrians could count them. The economic impact hit the Zephyrian Empire even harder than the military defeats. Their economy had been based on slave labor for millennia, and suddenly that labor was fighting back or being freed by human forces. Trade routes that had operated for centuries were cut by human raiders. Mining operations shut down as their workers escaped to human-protected zones. High Commander Vex was summoned before the Zephyrian High Council to explain how a primitive species had destroyed half their military in a single day. The Council chamber had not seen such chaos in living memory. Counselors who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years were now arguing about whether to negotiate with humans or fight to the death. Vex tried to explain that human technology was far more advanced than their intelligence had suggested, but the Council refused to believe it. They ordered the remaining fleet to regroup and prepare for a final assault on Earth. The High Commander knew it was a suicide mission, but he had no choice except to obey. Dr. Rachel Burns monitored Zephyrian communications from her station on Titan and reported that the enemy was planning one last desperate attack. The aliens were gathering every surviving ship for a final battle that would either restore their empire or destroy it completely. Human forces throughout the galaxy began moving toward Earth to meet the coming storm. President Rodriguez addressed the United Nations for what might be the last time. Humanity had won the first round, but the war was far from over. The Zephyrian Empire was dying, but like any dangerous animal, it was most deadly when cornered. Earth was about to face the largest space battle in galactic history, and the outcome would determine the future of every species in the galaxy. President Maria Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UES Constitution as it entered orbit above the former Zephyrian homeworld. The planet below was no longer the center of a galactic empire, but a defeated world waiting to learn its fate. Maria activated the communication system and prepared to address not just the Zephyrians, but every species in the galaxy. Her message was broadcast on all frequencies and translated. into 600 different languages. Humanity would not tolerate aggressive empires that enslaved other species. The age of galactic bullies was ending, and Earth would personally ensure that it stayed ended. Any civilization that tried to conquer others would face the full military might of the human race. The reaction across the galaxy was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, 47 different species had sent messages requesting human protection from various threats. The Orion Federation was being attacked by raiders. The Centauri Republic faced invasion from the Scorpion Empire. 12 other conflicts were already burning across known space. Admiral Lisa Carter established the Human Defense Coalition from her headquarters on the liberated world of New Geneva. The coalition would offer military protection to any peaceful species that requested it. Human fleets would patrol trade routes. Human marines would train local defense forces. Human weapons would be provided to anyone who needed to defend their freedom. The transformation happened faster than anyone had expected. Within 6 months, Earth went from being an unknown world to the galaxy's newest superpower. Human ships appeared in star systems that had never seen aliens before. Human diplomats negotiated peace treaties between species that had been fighting for centuries. Captain Jake Morrison led the exploration fleets that pushed into previously unknown regions of space. The galaxy was much larger than humans had realized, and it was full of civilizations that needed protection from aggressive neighbors. Every new world they discovered seemed to have its own version of the Zephyrian problem. The surviving Zephyrians were relocated to a single star system under strict human supervision. Their former empire was divided among the species they had enslaved. Worlds that had been strip-mined for centuries were given back to their original inhabitants. The galaxy's largest prison had become its greatest symbol of liberation. High Commander Vex was brought before a galactic tribunal to answer for crimes against 43 different species. The evidence against him filled entire data banks. Billions of beings had suffered under his rule, and now they would finally have justice. The trial was broadcast across the galaxy as a warning to other would-be conquerors. Commander Amy Watson established the Galactic Freedom Academy on the former slave world of Kepler 7. The academy would teach defensive strategies to species who had never been allowed to protect themselves. Students came from across the galaxy to learn human military tactics and weapons technology. The academy became a symbol of the new galactic order. Former slaves taught classes on resistance warfare. Human instructors shared advanced combat techniques. Alien engineers learned how to build their own defense systems. Every graduate returned home with the knowledge needed to keep their people free. Dr. Nathan Pierce opened the Interspecies Research Institute, where human and alien scientists worked together on projects that would benefit everyone. Medical advances that took humans years to develop were shared freely with other species. Agricultural techniques that could feed billions were taught to civilizations facing starvation. The Institute proved that cooperation was more powerful than conquest. Scientific discoveries that might have taken centuries were completed in years through combined effort. The galaxy began to prosper in ways that had never been possible under the old system of empires and slavery. Captain Ben Tucker commanded the patrol fleet that kept the trade routes safe from pirates and raiders. The human ships were fast enough to respond to any threat and powerful enough to stop any aggressor. Merchant vessels that had been afraid to leave their home systems were now trading freely across hundreds of worlds. Lieutenant Sophie Grant managed the Refugee Assistance Program that helped displaced populations find new homes. Millions of beings who had been enslaved for generations needed help adjusting to freedom. Human social workers and psychologists provided counseling and support to species. Recovering from centuries of oppression, the Galactic Council met in emergency session to address the new reality. Earth had become the most powerful military force in known space, and they were using that power to protect the weak instead of conquering them. The Council voted unanimously to recognize humanity as a Category 1 civilization with full sovereign rights. Ambassador Ellen Davis accepted the Council's recognition on behalf of all humanity. She made it clear that Earth's military power came with responsibility. Humans would use their strength to maintain peace and protect freedom throughout the galaxy. Any species that threatened others would face immediate human intervention. General Kevin Adams established forward bases in 12 different sectors to ensure rapid response to any crisis. The bases were staffed by volunteers from dozens of species who had been trained by human instructors. The galaxy now had a police force that could stop aggression before it became conquest. Marcus Bell expanded the galactic communication network to connect every civilized world in known space. Information flowed freely between species for the first time in galactic history. Scientific discoveries, cultural exchanges, and trade opportunities spread at the speed of light across hundreds of star systems. Dr. Rachel Burns coordinated the massive terraforming projects that would restore worlds damaged by Zephyrian strip mining. Human environmental technology could repair centuries of damage in just a few years. Dead worlds began to bloom again as forests and oceans returned to planets that had been barren wastelands. The final message came from the Galactic Council itself, formally apologizing to humanity for the classification error that had nearly led to their enslavement. Earth was now recognized as the galaxy's protector and guardian of freedom. The species that had been ordered to submit now sat in judgment over their former oppressors. The transformation was complete. The galaxy that had been ruled by fear and slavery was now protected by species that fought for freedom and justice. Human warships patrolled the space lanes, carrying hope to every corner of known space. The age of galactic empires was over, and the age of galactic cooperation had begun. The Zephyrians had expected to find a primitive world ripe for exploitation. Instead, they had awakened something that would reshape the galaxy forever. They had ordered humanity to submit, but the only thing that darkened alien skies now were human warships carrying freedom to every world that needed it.